What made you quit a job on the spot? I worked at McDonald's when I was 16. We used to get a free McDouble or hot and spicy with a small fries and drink for our lunch break. One day when I went on break, the franchise owner was there, and when he noticed I asked for cheese on the hot and spicy, he attempted to make me pay for the whole meal because cheese wasn't free. I thought he was joking, so I laughed and started walking towards the break room until he yelled at me not to walk away from him in front of customers and my coworkers. I couldn't believe it. This grown-ass successful businessman was hounding at 16-year-old for a slice of cheese. Told him I wasn't gonna pay, put the food down and walked out. They tried calling me to come to work that weekend. I told them no thanks and never went back. Worked for a privately owned bakery for exactly 1 week. The owner's son comes in, walks past the counter and into the bathroom. He comes out a few minutes later without acknowledging me or my coworker, gets into his car and drives away. We both looked at each other, then opened the door only to find this guy literally shit all over the toilet seat and the toilet paper holder. I called the owner, told her what happened, and she said to deal with it. So I asked my coworker if she wanted to clean it up because I wasn't going to. She declined and I told her I was walking out. She did as well. We locked up the store and told the owner we quit but would reconsider staying if her son came back to clean up his own mess. She yelled and berated us for 20 seconds before I said goodbye and hung up. He was 22 at the time and I'm pretty sure he had a drug problem. When I started working there, he was an employee for a day or two before his mom came in and told him to leave after finding out he was taking money from the register. I think on that day he had enough and decided to do what he did to get back at her. My coworker and I were caught in the crossfire and bailed out of that situation fast. Not me, but a middle-aged tradesman where I work. I work underground and it isn't for everybody. Terrible environment and whatnot. This particular individual starting working and after a few weeks decided that it wasn't for him. Bad conditions and hostile supervisor. He approached the boss at the morning meeting and told him that he wasn't going underground and that he was quitting. The boss told him that he had to give him 2 weeks notice, and without missing a beat the guy replied, "For the next 2 weeks you're gonna notice that I'm not here," turned around, packed his shit and left. Was never heard from again. I got blamed for something that wasn't my fault. Was in an argument with our VP or marketing because I had the audacity to suggest a solution that would have avoided our problem instead of accepting fault for something I didn't do. He told me he doesn't pay me to think, so that was my last day. I was 18. On my lunch, a drunk manager came in the break room, asked me a bunch on invasive personal questions, and when I was curt and evasive, she exited the room, closed the door, and announced to the office, "What a bitch." Gathered my stuff and walked out. An assistant manager followed me out and tried to block my car from pulling out of the parking lot. I pulled around him and left. Heard later that the story going around the office was that I almost ran him down in the parking lot. Not even close. I worked for T-Mobile store, authorized reseller, not an actual dealer. 1 week, I had an amazing week, sold 55 phones, brand new activations on a business account with 55 high-end phones at that time. When I got my next check, they said my paperwork was not in order and thus they couldn't pay me. As a side note, they always told us to make copies of all paperwork in case this happened so you can show it to the manager and get it resolved within a day. I went over my backup paperwork with my boss. He said everything looked to be in order and he would have the office cut me a check. I went to the office, and they told me it was still not in order. I immediately gave them my store key and quit on the spot. I did go through collections and they did settle before I took them to court. The company did go out of business after a few years because they tried that with many other employees and eventually lead to an investigation by the government, according to an old coworker I bumped into years later. The company did go out of business after a few years because they tried that with many other employees and eventually lead to an investigation by the government, according to an old coworker I bumped into years later. About that. I work for a government enforcement agency, and I personally love to fuck up companies who pull shit like this. But we can only go after those we know about, so people, file complaints. Your state attorney general's office has a complaints page you can find if you Google, and if it's related to financial products at all, loans, bank accounts, that kind of thing, your state probably has a financial services agency, sometimes with a different name than that, who you can and should also complain to. I want to hear from you. Edit, forgot to mention most, all states and the federal government have a Department of Labor who can look into wage theft and other cases of you getting screwed on the job. Wage theft dwarfs every other kind of theft/robbery/ etc. I once worked in a call center that would do the oops, I know you got 1,000 payment plans and were expecting a massive bonus, but QC found a call where you didn't verify their third phone number, so you failed and you get 0 gimmick. It wound up being closed down when the housing crisis hit because it was a subprime servicer and everyone defaulted. Sucks to be you guys. I worked commission furniture sales and was always wondering how my paycheck was lower than expected based on my sales and the business's stated commissions rates. Finally, I made an Excel spreadsheet that would track deliveries for up to 2 months and give me a rolling total of what my next 4 paychecks would be. We were supposed to track our sales in the computer, so that's what I was doing. I listed what I sold, delivery days and times, and what I was to make. Once I told them I was doing this, suddenly my paychecks started to match, roughly. So I shared it with all my coworkers and taught them how to use it. Within a couple of weeks, everyone in the store was using my tracker and questioning their paychecks if they were different. Fast forward about 3 weeks and I was unexpectedly let go for performance issues. I wasn't the store's best seller, cause frankly I didn't want to be, but I certainly wasn't the worst. I'm almost certain it's because I taught the employees how to track their commissions, which forced the owners to stop fudging the numbers in their face. I always wondered about the furniture salesperson business. Only because I get the impression of high turnover, yet I bought furniture for 2 different houses, 8 years apart from the same guy. And he remembered us. Not in a small town, not a huge sale, the first one at least, and at one of the big mid-Atlantic furniture retailers, Ranf. I sometimes wonder about that guy. Were you at a smaller furniture retailer? It's hit and miss. If you can last long enough to build up a clientele, you're gonna make good money. Part of what I hated is probably what happened to you. If a salesperson remembers and can prove that you're their prior customer, they can effectively claim your business. Which means people who have been there forever and made sales get to claim people they know will buy. Easy money. When you're left to this up is yours and it's a customer putzing around price shopping, you're fucked. I worked in a fairly low traffic store with 7 to 8 employees, so if I got a price shopper, I didn't have another chance to make money until often an hour to an hour and a half later. I also worked with Patty, who had worked at the store for 15 years and laid claim to every young couple that walked in the door saying she remembers them from a sale she made a couple years ago. So Patty made great money, I didn't. My mom's best friend works for Ashley Furniture and is one of the top earners in the country for them. She's so well known that my Ashley in a store 2 hours away knew her by name and reputation. She makes an easy 6 figures a year from her commissions, so it can be a great job if you stick it out. I hated it though, especially working for a shady mom and pop franchise like I did. They also punished me for taking lunches. If my up occurred while I was on lunch and I didn't come out and take it, it was forfeited and I was put in the back of the line once I finished lunch, not back wherever I would have normally been in rotation. I was asked to lie to parents and cover up a kid failing, in elementary school, by support staff. When I confronted the principal about it, he said that she was just doing her job and I was not a team player for not doing so. So I explained the situation. Same response, I should have helped in covering it up. As soon as kids went home, I started emptying my desk. Kids started in my class in grade 5, in Belgium, so 10 years old, but she was put on a personalized path and given math and Dutch at a grade 3 level. She basically continued this path but never did really well. At the end of grade 6, kids either graduate or they don't. If you do, you get to go to certain middle/high schools. If you don't, some schools are no longer accessible but you can of course still go to another high school. This, of course, was a big no-no. So, they told parents that because she was doing so well at a grade 4 level, when she was in grade 6, she could just move up with the other kids, who did complete their classes at a grade 6 level. And I said she couldn't, parents were split. The father understood and since I had talked to him privately, he knew. Mother on the other hand was furious. Every conversation I ever had with her was with the support staff present, by the request of said support staff, and they always continued afterwards. Turns out, she had promised the mother the kid could just graduate. Veiled. I mean, I know it happened in other grades as well, and I also know several teachers knowingly put different grades in their reports, rather than their actual grades, to make everybody happy and make sure kids didn't feel bad. This was brought to the attention of said support staff and the principal later on by someone else. I didn't work there anymore, but nothing came of it. So well. Education in Belgium. Some schools just suck. Asked for a raise and was told okay. Next morning, Friday, I was told by the same person who agreed with the raise that I should put a few more years in and then we'll talk again. Locked my toolbox at the end of the day and called a tow truck to pick it up. Shop manager was shocked that next Monday to find an empty spot where my tools were and couldn't understand why I left.